You see someone. Instantly, you want them. Not in a, "I'd like to get to know them" way. In a raw, physical, consuming way. Your brain floods with desire. You're not thinking about their personality, their values, whether they're compatible with your life. You're just thinking about their body, about sex, about satisfying an urge that feels urgent and undeniable. That's lust. And it's not love. It's not even attraction in the deeper sense. It's biology hijacking your brain and convincing you that physical desire is meaningful connection. Lust is one of the most powerful psychological forces humans experience. It overrides logic, ignores red flags, and makes you do things you wouldn't normally do. It feels intense, so you assume it's significant. But intensity isn't meaning. Lust is your brain's reward system firing in response to sexual stimulus, and it has nothing to do with whether the person is good for you, compatible with you, or even someone you'd want to talk to after the physical act is over. Most people confuse lust with attraction or even love. They feel the intensity and think it's special. But lust isn't about the other person. It's about what your brain wants from them. And once you understand the psychology behind it, how it works, why it feels so consuming, and what happens after it's satisfied, you stop mistaking it for something it's not. The biology that creates the illusion of connection. The objectification mechanism that reduces people to bodies. And the aftermath problem when lust fades and you're left with nothing underneath. Subscribe to that stoic stick, because we break down the psychology behind desire, not the fantasy you're sold about it. Let's decode lust. 1. The biology versus the illusion. Lust isn't emotional. It's biological. It's your brain responding to sexual stimulus, physical appearance, pheromones, cues that signal reproductive fitness. And when your brain detects those signals, it releases a flood of chemicals designed to make you pursue sex. Testosterone and estrogen spike. Dopamine surges. Your reward system lights up the same way it does for food, drugs, or anything your brain perceives as necessary for survival or pleasure. You're not falling for a person. You're experiencing a chemical reaction. Here's the illusion. Lust feels meaningful. The intensity makes you think it's special, that this person is different, that the connection is real. But it's not connection. It's your brain prioritizing reproduction. The chemicals don't care if you're compatible. They don't care if the person is emotionally available, kind, or even someone you like. They only care about sexual opportunity, and they override rational thought to make you pursue it. This is why lust makes you ignore red flags. Your prefrontal cortex, the part of your brain responsible for judgment and decision-making, gets suppressed when sexual desire is high. You see what you want to see. You rationalize behavior you'd normally find unacceptable. You convince yourself that the physical chemistry means something deeper. But it doesn't. You're just hormonally impaired. Dopamine is the primary driver of lust. It creates craving, anticipation, obsession. You think about the person constantly. You check your phone. You replay interactions. It feels like infatuation, but it's not. It's your reward system firing because your brain has identified a potential sexual partner. And dopamine doesn't differentiate between meaningful connection and pure physical desire. It just signals, pursue this, so you do. The key difference between lust and love is what happens after dopamine fades. Love involves oxytocin and vasopressin, bonding chemicals that create attachment and emotional connection. Lust doesn't. It's purely dopamine-driven, which means once the sexual novelty wears off or the desire is satisfied, the feeling disappears. There's no bond underneath, no attachment, just the absence of craving. This is why people experience post-sex clarity. The dopamine crashes, the hormones normalize, and suddenly you're looking at someone you barely know, wondering why you wanted them so badly 5 minutes ago. That clarity isn't regret. It's your brain returning to baseline and realizing there was no real connection, just chemistry pretending to be meaning. 2. The objectification mechanism. Lust reduces people to bodies. It's not malicious. It's mechanical. When you're experiencing pure sexual desire, you're not seeing a whole person. You're seeing sexual features, physical traits that trigger arousal, personality, intelligence, values, humor. None of that registers when lust is driving. Your brain has narrowed its focus to one thing: sex. And in that state, the other person becomes an object of desire, not a human with complexity. This is objectification, and it's built into the psychology of lust. Your brain isn't trying to know them. It's trying to have them. And that distinction matters because objectification prevents intimacy. You can't connect with someone you're not seeing as fully human. You're interacting with a projection, a sexual fantasy, not the actual person in front of you. Objectification also explains why lust-based interactions feel shallow. There's no curiosity about who they are, no interest in their thoughts, their history, their inner world. The conversation, if there is one, is transactional, a means to an end. You're not building connection, you're negotiating access. And once that access is granted or denied, the interaction ends. There's nothing left to sustain it. This is why lust doesn't translate into relationships. You can't build a partnership with someone you've only seen as a body. Even if you try to transition from lust to something deeper, the foundation is wrong. You started with objectification, and that imprint doesn't disappear just because you decide you want more. The other person feels it. They know they were desired for their body, not their humanity. And that awareness creates distance, not intimacy. Lust also bypasses compatibility. When you're driven by sexual desire, you don't assess whether this person aligns with your life, your values, your goals. You don't ask if they're emotionally healthy, available, or capable of the relationship you want. You just want them physically. And that creates situations where you end up involved with people who are completely wrong for you, not because you're naive, but because lust doesn't care about compatibility. It only cares about satisfaction. There's also the power dynamic in objectification. When you objectify someone, you're not seeing them as an equal. You're seeing them as something to acquire, consume, or experience. And when both people are doing this to each other, the interaction becomes transactional. Both are using the other for physical gratification. There's no mutual respect, no genuine interest, no foundation for anything real. Just two people objectifying each other and calling it connection. 3. The aftermath problem. Lust has an expiration date. The intensity doesn't last. And when it fades, and it always fades, you're left with a decision. Is there anything real here, or was it only ever physical? Most of the time, it's the latter, and that realization is the aftermath problem. You pursued someone based on desire, ignored incompatibility, skipped emotional connection, and now you're standing in the wreckage of something that was never built to last. This is post-lust clarity, and it's brutal. The dopamine is gone, the sexual novelty has worn off, and suddenly you're seeing the person clearly, not as the object of desire you projected onto them, but as they actually are. And often, you don't like what you see. Maybe they're emotionally unavailable. Maybe you have nothing in common. Maybe the connection you thought existed was just physical chemistry masquerading as compatibility. The clarity doesn't feel good. It feels like waking up from a delusion. Some people experience this immediately after sex. The desire is satisfied, the chemicals crash, and they feel nothing. No attachment, no affection, just emptiness and sometimes regret. This isn't because sex is wrong. It's because lust without emotional foundation creates a void. You got what your body wanted, but your brain realizes there's nothing else there. No intimacy, no bond, just the absence of craving. Others experience the aftermath more slowly. The lust fades over weeks or months, and they start noticing all the things they ignored at the beginning, the incompatibilities, the lack of emotional depth, the fact that they don't actually enjoy this person's company outside of physical interaction, and they realize they stayed because of lust, not because of connection. Now that the lust is gone, there's no reason to stay. But leaving feels complicated because time was invested, even if that time was based on a false foundation. The aftermath problem also raises the question, can lust evolve into love? Sometimes, yes. If both people are willing to transition from physical desire to emotional intimacy, if they're compatible beyond the bedroom, if they invest in actually knowing each other, then lust can be the starting point for something real. But that's rare. Most lust-based connections don't survive the aftermath because they were never built on anything sustainable. They were built on chemistry, and chemistry fades. The harsh truth: lust is designed to fade. It's not meant to last. It's an evolutionary mechanism to initiate sexual behavior, not to sustain relationships. Once the novelty is gone, once the dopamine normalizes, the feeling disappears. And if there's nothing underneath, no compatibility, no intimacy, no genuine connection, the relationship collapses. So that's the psychology of lust. The biology that hijacks your brain with dopamine and tricks you into mistaking physical desire for meaningful connection. The objectification mechanism that reduces people to bodies and prevents real intimacy. And the aftermath problem when lust fades and you're left with nothing underneath. Just the realization that intensity isn't the same as compatibility. Lust isn't love. It's not even attraction in the deeper sense. It's a chemical reaction designed to initiate sex, not build relationships. And the mistake most people make is treating lust like it's significant. They feel the intensity and assume it means something. But intensity is just your reward system firing. It doesn't predict compatibility. It doesn't create intimacy. And it doesn't last. Understanding lust doesn't mean rejecting it. Sexual desire is natural, but confusing it with connection causes problems. You pursue people you shouldn't. You stay in situations that aren't good for you. You ignore red flags because the chemistry feels too strong to walk away from. And then, when the lust fades, you're stuck dealing with the reality you avoided at the beginning. Real connection isn't built on lust. It's built on knowing someone, respecting them, choosing them beyond the physical. Lust can be part of that, but it can't be the foundation. Because foundations built on desire collapse the moment desire fades. If this gave you clarity on what you're actually feeling, drop a comment and tell me how you distinguish lust from real connection. And subscribe to that stoic stick for psychology that doesn't romanticize desire, it just explains what it actually is. Stay aware, stay honest, and remember, lust is biology, not meaning. Don't mistake the high for the truth.